maybe you could tell us a little bit about this piece and some of your inspiration for writing it.
Yeah, sure. So, I've written quite a bit of saxophone music, and Andrew Hutchins, who organized this commission, approached me about doing another piece for saxophone. And at first, I was thinking, well, might have some other opportunities I want to take advantage of, but uh, ultimately, I decided I would do it, and the reason is because what makes this piece stand out among my other works is that it's for tenor saxophone. So I had never written a piece for tenor saxophone, a solo piece, but I also know that I've heard from saxophonists that they're always wanting or wishing for more tenor rep. So I was really excited to write a piece for tenor and piano, pretty standard, kind of instrumentation there, and contribute something to the repertoire that maybe would be interesting and fun for folks to play on tenor. So here we go. I'm writing this new piece for tenor saxophone and piano. And one thing that my music has explored from a structural standpoint is the relationship between pitch and time. I would say that you can find this just about in all of my pieces from the last maybe 10 or 15 years, that in some way or another, I'm constantly exploring this idea that the pitch domain, the pitches in space and points in time have a relationship to each other that's isomorphic. And the way that it works in this structure is that there are intervals between pitches and there are points between attacks and time, and that those things can be measured, and that the measurements between intervals can be mapped onto the measurements between attack points and time. So this system is actually called the time point system. And so this piece, the new piece, At the Seams, really utilizes and taps into that pretty heavily. So the title, At the Seams, so what are the seams that we're at? So I'm imagining these two like domains, these two fabrics, one being pitch space and one being time, and that I'm sort of sewing them together in different ways as the piece goes on. So the seams in the piece are the seams between pitch and time, and that I'm joining these things together and then undoing them.
In working on the piece, there are two particular sections that I think are felt to me noteworthy in a way to think about in terms of practicing it, and that was the sort of extended accelerando and retardando sections,
Mhm.
and also the trill section that kind of has that seam structure that you were mentioning. So
Yeah.
maybe you could speak specifically to those elements and how you conceived of them in the piece.
But then we get to this part that you're talking about with the extreme accelerando and decelerando. It's getting faster and faster, then it's unwinding. And so thinking about this as like tightly, quickly, you have two separate things that are far apart and you're quickly like putting them together. And so what happens is you hear the saxophone and piano they're kind of messy, and they speed up and it becomes this sort of mess, and then they slowly like fall together into place as it slows back down, as it like becomes undone. Like, so you're constantly putting this thing together and taking it back apart and putting it together, and then you take it back apart again, right? So it creates this speeding up and slowing down. The speeding up is because those pitches are getting closer together, so the rhythm becomes faster. And as the pitches become further apart, the rhythm starts to slow down. The point for departure on this piece is the in pitch space in the pitch world is between A and B flat. So A and B flat is like the smallest little area that gets like stitched, right? And then everything, it goes outwards from there. And so we ultimately make our way back to this pitch place at the end of the piece, where there's this little trill that's happening between A and B flat, just kind of like floating by. It's really resonant. It's sort of like a wash. But what we hear are almost like memories from earlier previous parts of the piece coming out of that A and B flat. We hear other pitches like fall away from them and come back, or fall or move upwards and come back. In the saxophone's case, it's moving upwards and it's coming back. In the pianist's case, it's falling away and coming back. So there's like this stretching of pitch and time space that's happening in a more sort of magical way, I think, at the end of the piece. When I was an undergraduate student, I used to go on the weekends to watch jazz at some local like jazz clubs. And a lot of the music majors would go sit in. A lot of the jazz majors would go sit in. And I always remembered like the tenor, whenever someone sat in on tenor sax, it was like my favorite instrument. It was my favorite color. It was my favorite range. It was my favorite timbre of those evenings. And I remember that sound really well. I mean, the jazz tenor saxophone, which my piece is not a jazz piece, but I remember that timbre really well.
What's next for Baljinder?
Yeah, so I'll answer that first by saying what just happened for me. So I just last week I had a premiere of a ballet that I wrote. Believe it or not, that it's all saxophones and percussion. So this was a piece commissioned for the 100th anniversary of the Eastman School of Music and the 50th anniversary of Garth Fagan Dance Company. So Garth Fagan Dance were the dancers, did the choreography and dance for the premiere. And the Eastman Saxophone Project played this piece with the Eastman Percussion Ensemble together. Percussion is another world that I've been really involved in. So they did it with 20 saxophones, which was like a dream come true for me, you know?
That's awesome.
So that just happened. And I have on October 22nd, a new album coming out called Alchemy. That's all saxophone music.
And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about At the Seams and for writing the piece. It's a great piece to work on. I look forward to more performances myself and to hearing what other people are doing with the piece.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And thanks for putting all your time and talent into it. And thanks for supporting my music.